He's a fighting world champion, and I'm a fighting world champion. So
world champion in boxing, because in fighting, I think you are very limited.
I'll beat you at boxing. I'll beat you in a cage. No problem.
No, bro.
No problem.
Focus on boxing.
No problem.
For right now.
Best at boxing, and I'll beat him in a cage fight. No two ways about it.
Welcome back to Fighting Words. I'm Carissa Maxwell, joined once again by my friends Andreas, Hale, and Tom Gray. It's good to have the gang back together. And this week, of course, is Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou Fight Week. We have already debated at length as to whether or not this boxing MMA crossover fight should actually be happening. But now that it is happening this Saturday, October 28th on ESPN Plus in Saudi Arabia, it's time to talk about the repercussions of having the heavyweight boxing champion face the former UFC heavyweight champion in what is a non-title fight. So before we discuss what this means for the sport of boxing, let's jump right into it and get your predictions on who you think is going to win the fight this weekend.
Tyson Fury will win the fight and can win the fight in pretty much whatever way he chooses. I think that if the moment moved him and he was focused enough, he could probably win the fight with one hand. I've not watched any of Ngannou, but from what I understand, he's a big puncher. If someone from the UFC wants to tell me he knocked out this guy, great, but it's the wrong sport. Oh, but he beat this guy, great, but it's the wrong sport. He's taken his pro debut against, thus far, until proven otherwise, the best heavyweight of his generation, and it's pretty much mission impossible.
Tyson Fury is going to win this fight very easily. He's got a date booked with Alexander Usyk, supposedly in December. There's no reason for him to keep Francis Ngannou hanging around. They don't need to worry about pay-per-view buys. They don't need to worry about entertaining the crowd or carrying the fight. Saudi Arabia's already paid for that. So what Tyson Fury needs to go out there and do is just handle business, beat down Francis Ngannou within maybe 2 rounds, and prepare for Alexander Usyk. There's no reason for him to do anything else. Does Ngannou have a chance? Sure. I have a chance of dunking on Wembyama. It's not happening, though. So there's no chance. This is the best heavyweight of this generation going in there against a good UFC heavyweight. It's not like Francis Ngannou's undefeated in MMA. He has lost to Stipe Miocic. This is not... I don't know how we're trying to create this parody, but I guess it's good for sales, right? It's good to drive up interest because Francis Ngannou punches really hard, but he has no chance. He's going to get smoked by Tyson Fury.
This is a big fight, though, not with a title on the line and not for boxing purists, but to your point, Andreas, for entertainment value. And it's very strange to put Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou in the same column as, say, Jake Paul and Nate Diaz when we're talking about crossover fights. But given the caliber of interest for a fight like this, is this kind of setting, again, not the precedent, but kind of setting the tone to see more crossover fights in the future?
Yeah, I mean, Tyson Fury's personality sells this fight, and everything was beautifully timed with the Netflix series, etc. He's been on a massive high. I mean, he was big when he retired just after Klitschko. He was enormous by the time he went through the trilogy with Wilder, and his star has just continued to grow. So his personality alone sells the fight. And then it's this one attribute that Ngannou's got, which is power, which resonates with everyone. Punching power resonates with everyone. If you go down to, an arcade, you can find a punching machine. If you watch a street fight between two people that don't know what they're doing, then they're throwing punches as hard as they can. It's something that you can sell to the public, and it's been done extremely well. But ultimately, it's a novelty. And I wrote a story last week about Floyd Patterson and Pete Rademacher. Rademacher was challenging Floyd Patterson, who was heavyweight champion at the time. Rademacher was an Olympic gold medalist, and it was his first pro fight. And interestingly enough, and I didn't know this until I looked into it, but Patterson received the biggest payday of his career for that fight. And the reason, again, is because it was a novelty. It was something that would sell to the masses. You didn't even need to be a boxing fan. It was a storyline because this Olympic champion who'd never fought as a pro was challenging the heavyweight champion of the world. So it's the same kind of thing again. An easy sell for people to buy into, out with the boxing hardcore. And that's ultimately, as we know, that's what creates a big event.
It's sports entertainment, baby. That's what this is. It's the WWE. We are more interested in the storylines than the actual fight because casual fans don't necessarily care about technique. Francis Ngannou is a gigantic puncher. That promo video that they created was excellent and drums up interest. It is about entertaining, and Tyson Fury has the bombastic personality to do that. And if this might upset you, but Misfits Boxing is kind of proven by the hypothetical numbers they put out that the KSI Tommy Fury may have done over 1 million pay-per-view buys, that people just want to be entertained. And that's the reason why these fights will continue. As long as you got a juicy storyline with a big personality involved, it's going to sell more than two very technical fighters who are of a championship caliber. It's just the way of the world. We live in the TikTok social media era where people want to be entertained. That's it. We're going to see more of these, and it's not going to stop.
You both kind of mentioned it, but Francis Ngannou, he has a pretty powerful punch, something that in the MMA world should absolutely be feared. And if he was fighting maybe any other heavyweight boxer other than Tyson Fury, would probably be a bigger talking point. But to lean into that power behind his punch a little bit more, let's speak hypotheticals for a second. What happens if Tyson Fury does lose? If Francis Ngannou is able to connect and it's lights out and he gets the upset, is he the new heavyweight champion to be feared? We know there's no belts on the line, but does that really put him in the conversation to face Usyk, Joshua, Wilder, all of these other names that we're constantly throwing around? And just what happens in general if he wins?
Okay, I need to get into dreamland for this, but it would, Tyson Fury would be the biggest laughingstock in boxing of all time. There would be nothing that you can even compare to it. It would be such an embarrassment. If you look at Anthony Joshua losing to Andy Ruiz, he's still got that black cloud hanging over him even now. And Andy Ruiz is a good, solid heavyweight contender. For Tyson Fury to get knocked out by a guy that's never had a professional boxing match would make him, forget it, not even the biggest laughing stock in boxing, just the biggest laughing stock in the world. That's how bad it would be. I would have to view Francis Ngannou as the heavyweight champion of the world. And it doesn't matter what the WBC says. If you knock out Tyson Fury in a professional prize ring, even though the fight is scheduled for 10 rounds, makes no difference. He would have a legitimate claim to say, I'm the heavyweight champion of the world. Why shouldn't he say it? In answer to, does Ngannou then go and fight Usyk? No, because you've not got enough money behind that. You've not got Fury's bombastic personality. You essentially would be looking at Fury and Ngannou 2 would be the only option for Tyson Fury, certainly. And Ngannou would want it again because he'd probably get even more money than he gets this time. But, Carissa, I just need to say, it's not going to happen.
If the unlikely happens and Francis Ngannou knocks out Tyson Fury, you might as well just burn boxing down because not only will Tyson Fury be the laughingstock, boxing as a whole will be a laughingstock because every MMA fan in the world and every MMA fighter is going to believe that they can beat a boxer because this just shouldn't happen. Francis Ngannou should have no chance to beat Tyson Fury. But if he does and he does not become the champion because there's no belt on the line, what's next? Well, obviously, Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury is up in smoke for the time being. There would have to be an immediate rematch between Fury and Ngannou for an even bigger payday. Everything's in shambles. Poor Deontay Wilder, poor Anthony Joshua, poor Dillian White, poor every heavyweight boxer would have to sit back and watch this happen because the biggest star in heavyweight boxing today, the lineal heavyweight champion, got knocked out by an MMA fighter with zero experience. Boxing would need some serious rehab if Francis Ngannou was able to pull this off. And there's nothing you can say to change my mind. You could say a lucky punch, but lucky punches don't happen to high caliber fighters like Tyson Fury. But if it happened here, burn boxing down because it's a mess.
Well, now that we just, put the fear of the future of boxing in everybody's head, let's move on to something that we hope will actually happen for the sake of the sport. And that is, of course, if Tyson Fury does win, which you both predict and the rest of the world also predicts that he will win. Allegedly, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk is on for the actual heavyweight championship fight that we have been waiting for, and that should have already happened. Now, December is the rumored time frame, but we've been burned before by these two. So when do we think this fight is actually going to happen, and where do we think it's going to happen?
I can't keep up with it. I mean, December was mentioned. Then Usyk did an interview saying that he needs 2 weeks pre-training and 12 weeks in camp. So that would blow December out of the water. So I'm struggling to keep up. Then someone from Fury's camp said, no, still December. I think we'll get the facts after Ngannou's been dealt with on Saturday. In terms of the destination, I think the three of us know it's going to Saudi Arabia. I think it was actually reported as being in Saudi Arabia. They're the only ones that confront the money. Wembley Stadium doesn't matter if it holds 100,000, 200,000. They cannot match the finances that the Middle East are putting down. So the fight will happen there. I tend to think it's going to be the first quarter of next year, but I hope I'm wrong. We've waited this long, right? I found out it's actually been on the line for 2 years. It's actually been getting talked about for 2 years. I thought it was longer than that. Usyk beat Joshua in September 2021, so it's only been a couple of years, but it feels longer. As long as we get it in the next, I don't know, if we got it in April, I would be quite happy, but I would rather see it in December.
Yeah, for Fury Usyk to happen in December 23rd, right before Christmas in the States, is pretty ambitious. But that's what they want to do. I just don't believe that's going to happen. I think we're looking at probably January, February. Because just like Tom said, Usyk says he needs this long camp in 12 weeks. There's no way you're fighting in December. Now, Tyson Fury, this is more like an abbreviated sparring session with Francis Ngannou. He's right back in camp. He could do this. It's just a matter of who's going to push who to make the fight happen when. And I think logically, it'll end up being January. I would like it to be December, but I don't know. Christmas is kind of weird, man. I don't know if you can get people to unask their wallets to spend like $100 on a pay-per-view right before they got to buy their kids presents. So I'd rather see this fight happen in January. I think that's more likely. It could happen in February. Anything past that is a little bit too long. I know we've been waiting a long time for this fight, but let's just get it over with so we can move on with our lives. So I'm saying December or January.
I think the one reason I don't think it'll be January or even February is if the fight is not on by the end of the year. I think both fighters will want to enjoy Christmas. I don't see them training. Even with the amount of money and all that, it's easily shifted that bit further so they can enjoy Christmas and start camp in January. That's why I think it would get pushed on.
So I hate to be a pessimist here, but again, we've been burned. I've learned to not get my hopes up with these two. So in theory, let's say this fight does not get made by January. And I don't fully expect a serious answer because I can't believe this is even a serious question. But who could you see Tyson Fury taking to fight next over Alexander Usyk?
I'm not even thinking about it, Carissa. Once they turn around and say the contracts are signed, and the contracts are signed for 2 fights, there's no reason for me to. I'm sorry not to swerve the question, right? I can't do it to myself. It's just going to give me a headache for the rest of the night. So I'm just looking at Usyk ×2. That's it. There is no other fight really for Tyson Fury at this point. And vice versa. I mean, I suppose Anthony Joshua, but Anthony Joshua, as I understand, it's probably going to take another tune-up in December, so he's out of the equation. Now, these two need to fight. I'm not even considering Tyson fighting anyone else.
I am, Tom. I'm considering one person.
Go.
Francis Ngannou. Look, if by some way Francis Ngannou has a decent showing on Saturday in Saudi Arabia, a decent showing, and for whatever reason, Usyk's not ready. Let's just say that Ngannou actually stuns Fury. Doesn't knock him out, stuns him. Does something to drum up more interest. And for whatever reason, Alexander Usyk is waffling back and forth on whether he can fight in December or not. Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury, too, could happen. I don't want it to happen, but I can see a universe where Tyson Fury says another $100 million? Thank you. And he just takes the money. I could see that happen. Very unlikely, but that's the only possible scenario. I don't see Tyson Fury defending his title against a legitimate heavyweight in between the Usyk fight. But I could see him fighting Francis Ngannou again.
Well, let's get through the first Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou fight before we start talking rematches. But I tend to agree with you there that would be an obvious next choice. If Alexander Usyk does not happen, which it will, we're going to be positive. We're going to think happy thoughts so that we can finally see that heavyweight title fight. But until then, please make sure you tune into Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. I'm talking to you, Tom, this Saturday, October 28th on ESPN Plus pay-per-view, coming to you live from Saudi Arabia. We'll be back next week to talk more boxing here on Fighting Words. I'm Chris Maxwell for Andreas Hale and Tom Gray. We will see you next week.